But we're going to return now to a very exciting speaker this morning. And so this meeting has really been about embracing change and what it takes to move forward, even in the face of uncertainty. And our next speaker shows us what that looks like, one step and one breath at a time. So I'm so honored to introduce our keynote speaker, Jess Wedel. She's a professional mountain guide, speaker, and ovarian cancer survivor. And Jess truly embodies the spirit of this meeting. After facing cancer, ovarian cancer in her 20s, she returned to the mountains and went on to summit Mt Everest with Any Mountain, a team that brought together gynecologic cancer survivors and oncologists. I really encourage everyone to go to Any Mountain's website. Dr. Joni Hope, who's one of our own GYN oncologists, has founded this beautiful, beautiful group. On Jess's expedition, she became the first ovarian cancer survivor to summit Mt Everest. Today, she guides expeditions around the world and shares powerful lessons in resilience, courage, and hope. Please join me in welcoming Jess Wedel to the stage.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you so much. Haha. I want to start this by talking about a room. It's a room I couldn't tell you the color of. A room that was very loud in a way I'd never experienced before. There were bodies moving everywhere all around me, machines beeping, the sound of my parents, or the look on my parents' eyes, trying to hide fear, and the sound of my own brain. Asking questions that I was afraid to say out loud. What if I don't survive this? What if I don't wake up from this? I was 27 years old and I was terrified. In the middle of all of that chaos, I felt someone lean close, a voice steady, quiet, right at my ear. I've got you. I have you in this moment. I will take care of you. That voice cut through everything. The machines, the fear, my own brain, just, I've got you. I've spent years trying to find the words for what that moment meant to me, what it means to be that afraid and have someone reach through the noise and say, you are not alone in this. The person who said those words to me today is in the room today. It's actually Dr. Karen Liu. And until a few seconds ago, she may not have even remembered that. My name is Jess Wedel. I'm a mountain guide, an ovarian cancer survivor, and I was sitting in a chemo chair not far from where many of your patients are sitting right now. And I know what it is to need hope, to need someone to give it to you on the days when you have none left of your own. You are those people. You are who I needed. And before we climb Everest today, I want you to feel the weight of that and the gift of it.
For climbers, Mount Everest is the ultimate test, but a mother and daughter from Oklahoma have already conquered something much tougher. Here's CBS's Janet Shamlian.
Where are we? Everest Base Camp.
Everest Base Camp! It just might be the ultimate girls' trip. Valerie and Jess Wedel hoping to become the first American mother-daughter team to reach the world's highest peak. We zoomed with them from base camp, 17,600 feet.
How much of this trip is about actually getting to the summit?
The possibility exists that we can get there, and that would be amazing. But like, if we're not enjoying every single moment along the way, then we've missed the point almost.
Already experienced climbers, the trek started weeks ago when they left Oklahoma.
Look how sunburned we are. Yeah, we have a little bit of sun.
It's a brutal undertaking for Valerie, who's 61 and has asthma, but also for Jess. Diagnosed with ovarian cancer in 2016, she's been through multiple surgeries and months of chemotherapy. She's now cancer-free.
It feels like part of our healing was coming into the mountains and being able to enjoy each other and have fun and just like live life.
They've already weathered storms on Everest.
60-mile-an-hour plus winds, whiteout conditions, 43 hours.
Ahead, one final push to the summit.
When we say we live every day, we really do, because we have been in a place where we didn't have maybe the next day. So every day. Yeah. So.
The adventure of a lifetime, but time together.
I'm a lucky mom.
The greatest gift. Janet Shamlian, CBS News.
Sorry.
The greatest gift. I love how she says that. Let's rewind for a second to 2016. I was living in Oklahoma City, surrounded by family, friends, and a really wonderful community. But I found myself doing what I'll call weekend warrioring. Do I have any weekend warriors in the audience? I know there's some on the front row right here. Trail running, climbing, hiking, traveling as much as I possibly could. And I loved this little life that I had built, but I was so curious about other people and places and adventures. And I would go on these often with my mom. Her and I had always shared this very special bond for adventures. We went on various hikes to Colorado 14ers, and eventually we found ourselves roped up and together on my first glacier climb on Mt Baker. There was just one problem, and it was admittedly a pretty big problem. While I had inherited my mom's sense of adventure, I had also inherited my dad's extreme fear of heights. And we're talking the man has shaky hands going over overpasses. I was terrified of heights. And so picture this, my mom and I are on Mt Baker, we're tied together on ropes, we're like 20 feet apart. She's in front because she had more experience at this point. And all I can do the entire time we're climbing is imagine myself slipping and falling and carrying her down with me. Every single step, I really struggled. I'd sort of reached this point in climbing where I wasn't sure if I loved this or I absolutely hated it. But I had this feeling that I needed to keep pushing forward, that maybe there was more to this fear than just totally walking away from it. And it was at that moment on Mt Baker where I really learned about what it means to keep going when your brain and everything is telling you to stop. Even when I was afraid, even when I wanted to quit. It was around this time that I walked in for a routine doctor visit on a sunny Friday morning, and I found out I had a tumor. I was healthy, I had no family history of cancer, so I still tried to be not overly concerned even as they scheduled that first surgery. When the nurse called after that surgery and she asked that I come to the doctor's office immediately and bring my mom or someone with me, I knew that something was really wrong. I thought of the lesson I was just beginning to learn in the mountains, that more can be done with this fear when you stand in it than when you run from it. And believe me when I tell you, when I was standing outside that doctor's office, all I wanted to do was run. I rode in silence with my mom to this appointment that we both knew would forever change our lives. Ovarian cancer. I was 27, I had a rare and aggressive form of ovarian cancer. Those moments, days, weeks, months were a total blur and still are. When you're diagnosed with cancer at a young age, you quickly see life through a totally different lens. At night, I would lie awake feeling my own mortality, not something many of my peers were doing at that time. And I wanted to do all the things that I had previously taken for granted, not knowing if any of that would ever be possible. My fear of heights seemed insignificant at this moment. In some ways, the day my cancer journey started, so did my Mt Everest journey. For me, treatment included 2 major surgeries and 18 weeks of chemotherapy. And after treatment, I was wrecked, as you all know. I could barely walk up a flight of stairs. In fact, I remember getting home from work one day and falling asleep in my car because I couldn't walk the 1 flight of stairs to my apartment. I really struggled physically with my emotions. But also with my emotions because they didn't feel like they were in line with what they should be. Almost a year after I was diagnosed, I had been declared NED, And everyone around me was screaming from the mountaintops and sending happy messages and celebrations, but I didn't feel that. I felt alienated. Like I should be really happy that the cancer was gone, but I just wasn't. I was left in a body that wasn't familiar to me. I had a plan for my life, and a lot of those plans were no longer a possibility. So I began to think, what can I do to try and make sense of everything? And I found that healing in being outside, in exploration. It was in climbing that I found a way I could process what I had been through that felt empowering, because when I was outside, I learned to move with the fear, to listen to it, to accept it, and even begin to be grateful for it. Months passed, and one day my mom sent me a text, "I think we should climb Mount Everest." And I laughed out loud because I was like, of course my mother is sending me a text, you saw her. I'm like, of course this is what she's doing. But it was very much this moment of YOLO, you only live once. We both felt this urgency to keep living as much as we possibly could. So we trained for years. We climbed all over the world, in Mexico and Bolivia and Ecuador, and we went back to Mount Rainier in Washington. And then in March of 2021, we flew to Nepal. This is a picture of Mount Everest, that big black pyramid. So let me paint a little picture for you guys of what it's like to climb Mount Everest, because it's not at all straightforward. You don't just get to base camp and climb to camp 1 and 2 and 3 and get to the summit and come back down. I wish it was that easy. It's gonna take you 10 days of hiking just to get to base camp. And once you get to base camp, you have to spend a few days and nights there getting used to the altitude because it's over 17,000 feet. And then what you do, you wait for good weather, you climb up to camp 1, then you come back down. And then you wait for another good weather window, you climb up to camp 1, you sleep, you climb all the way up to camp 2, you sleep, and then you come all the way back down to base camp. And then you do camp 1, camp 2, and then you go all the way up to camp 3 at 24,000 feet, and then you come all the way back down again. Every single time you can see the top, and you're like, I'd like to be there, but you put your backpack on and you head downhill. The reason is acclimatization. Your body has to adapt to this altitude very, very slowly, or it will fail you. You cannot rush the process. So you have to move up really slowly just so your head doesn't explode when you get to the summit. I mean, it doesn't literally explode, but you get it. But the catch is, anytime you're above 18,000 feet, which is gonna be any camp above base camp, anytime you're above that, your body is starting to deteriorate. Your muscles are starting to get weaker, you're unable to eat as well. So it's this crazy catch-22 where you wanna spend time up high to acclimate, but you wanna keep coming back down low so you can eat and hydrate and rest and recover. So not only is it very physically challenging to be going up and down, but psychologically it's so frustrating. Because you know you want to be going in this direction, but you're spending a heck of a lot of time climbing in this direction. And what you have to realize is that even though you're going completely backwards, where you're like, oh my goodness, this is not the way that I'd like to be going right now, you are still making progress because you're helping your body acclimatize. And for whatever reason, we tend to think that progress always has to happen in one direction, but that's just not the case. Sometimes you're going to have to go backwards for a bit in order to eventually get where you want to be. So don't ever look at that as backtracking, as losing ground. Look at it as an opportunity to regroup, regain some strength, so you're better out of the gates the next time around. I had felt this before too. Lying in a hospital bed after a bad week of chemo, my counts were crashing, feeling like my body was going in the wrong direction. Not knowing that it was quietly, slowly trying to heal itself. The acclimatization process isn't so different from chemo. Both of you asked to trust that going backwards is a part of going forwards. One of the biggest challenges of Everest happens right when you leave base camp. You head through what we call the Khumbu Icefall. Dun, 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 dun. I don't know why I did that. The Khumbu ice fall is basically 2,000 vertical feet of these big, huge moving chunks of ice. Think of it like a frozen waterfall, constantly shifting and moving. And these ice chunks are massive. They're like the size of houses and 10-story buildings. And this ice fall is in constant motion. So the sun comes up, everything starts to melt, and you're in constant danger of being crushed. It's made more complicated by the fact that there's also these big, huge open crevasses down hundreds of feet into the earth. So they have a pretty good system or something that they do. They expand these rickety aluminum ladders across these crevasses so you can go from one side to the other without falling in. And sometimes these ladders are latched together 3, 4, 5, 6 long. It's quite the adventure to try and go across those. But with all of these things combined, it's a very scary part of the mountain, whether you have a fear of heights or not. But it's also where I learned one of the best lessons about climbing, which is this: fear is okay. It's just a normal human emotion. Complacency is what will kill you. You have to be able to react to the environment as these things are shifting and changing. This is a photo of Camp 1. You can see some little tiny humans. You can see some tents. All those little divots you see in the snow are actually huge crevasses. So sometimes you cross ladders, sometimes you walk all the way around them. This is a photo of my mom and I in our tents at Camp 2. And in our down suits, we liked them. We thought they were pretty flattering. Yeah, you can borrow it if you'd like. Just find me after. The mountain doesn't care about your plan. You don't know what's going to happen from one minute to the next. So sometimes you look up at Mount Everest and it looks like this: clear skies, and you're like, okay, sweet, that looks doable. But in a matter of minutes, things can change, and that is what it can look like. Sometimes seconds, and that is really intimidating. There's just no such thing as a storm that lasts forever, and sometimes the only thing that gets you through is responding to exactly what's right in front of you, not some plan you made back in a warm room. I had a plan for my life, and it did not include getting cancer, but I did, and I had to adapt. The plan my mom and I had was to summit Mount Everest together, but that plan also started to change. My mom suffered from pretty bad asthma, and it had been getting worse throughout the trip as we went higher in the cold environment, and she made the very smart but very, very difficult decision to go home. And I was wrecked. It had been our dream to climb Everest together, and without her, I didn't know if I wanted to keep going. But she encouraged me to stay, and she encouraged me to climb. And I'd felt that feeling before. The moment in treatment when you wonder, is it worth it to keep showing up? When the thing you're fighting feels so far away, and the cost of fighting feels too high. Sometimes what gets you through isn't certainty. It wasn't that I knew the treatment was gonna work. It was just someone I loved, often my mom, saying, keep going. So we began to make our final preparations for the summit climb. I felt ready, my body felt ready, there was good weather ahead, and I went to sleep for what I thought would be my last night at base camp. That final night, I awoke to a tapping on the side of my tent and a voice telling me, hey, can you be in the dining tent in 10 minutes? And I listened as that voice went down the row of all the tents, tapping on each of my team members, requesting our collective presence. And I knew something was wrong. And then, gathered together in those early morning hours of what we thought would be the start of our ascent, we heard the news: COVID. COVID had made its way through some of our crew members, it had spread throughout all of camp, and it was too dangerous to climb knowing that everyone had been exposed. Trust me when I tell you that turning around and walking away from the deal was harder than going for it. But when you're up there in the mountains, you have to make very difficult decisions in very tough conditions when things around you are far, far from perfect. And you have to think about how every single move that you make is going to affect everyone else around you. It doesn't matter how much blood, sweat, or tears you've put into something. If the conditions aren't right, if team members are sick, you have to cut your losses and turn around. We had waited, we had distanced, we had done everything that we possibly could. But our attempt at Everest was over and our summit was canceled. We had spent more than 2 months on the mountain, but we called it quits. Mount Everest is, in fact, just a pile of rocks and ice and snow. And you can always go back, but if you do something dumb up there, you may not have that chance. So I came back home, and it was hard. It felt, honestly, a little bit like an ego hit. I sort of had this big public failure. There was a lot of people cheering for us, a lot of people watching our story. Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay, the first people to summit Everest. They're names that most people know. You guys have probably heard of those names at some point. But what we don't talk about as much are the dozens of previous climbers that had attempted and failed. And maybe if they hadn't tried and failed first, Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay would never have made it to the summit. We just don't know. My point is, when you're trying to do really hard things, when you're gonna push yourself outside your comfort zone, maybe it's a new treatment protocol or a new research direction that isn't panning out yet for you, you're gonna have to give yourselves and your teams the freedom to fail. You have to just come back from it the better the next time around. So when I got back from Mount Everest, I took another big leap of faith. I quit my job, sold everything I had, moved in my car, made my dad really proud, drove out west and got hired as a mountain guide. And now I spend my days leading teams up Mount Baker and Mount Rainier and guiding all over the world. In fact, I just got back from Nepal like 3 days ago. And now, after facing some of these fears and accepting them, being curious instead of complacent, I have found a life that's very meaningful to me and one that I love so much. Being in the mountains and helping other people have those experiences too. Spoiler alert, I did end up going back to Mount Everest with a really special team that you guys have heard a little bit about throughout this conference. I was invited to be a part of a project called Any Mountain, where we raised awareness about ovarian cancer and advocated for further research. And part of this project was to put the first ovarian cancer survivor on the summit. And somehow, in a moment of everything in my life coming together, my cancer, my climbing, my guiding, they had chosen me to be that person. So I gave the mountain another shot in spring of 2023. I spent 2 weeks leading a team of 20 ovarian cancer survivors, oncologists, and caregivers, a few of which are in the front row right now, Joni Hope, Dr. Annie Alaniz, Dr. Jill White. We went to Everest Base Camp. We trekked, we had an amazing experience. And from there, the team gave me hugs and good wishes and said, "We're going home." And I said, "Who's the smart one here? Can I come with you?" I'm just kidding. So I did the acclimatization process. We went up and down and up and down. And finally, I was ready for my summit push. I left base camp. I moved through the Khumbu icefall. I went straight to Camp 2. And when we topped out of the icefall, I faced some of the strongest, coldest wind I had ever felt, the jet stream winds. By the time I made it to 21,000 feet at Camp 2, I had developed a gnarly cough, affectionately called the Khumbu cough. And I woke up the next morning and I felt absolutely horrible. I had fever, I was achy, my cough was relentless. And I was hours slower moving from Camp 2 up the Lhotse face to Camp 3 than I was on my previous acclimatization rounds. And I remember looking up and thinking, I can't believe it. I cannot believe I'm in the same spot I was in 2 years ago, where being sick might prevent me from being able to climb this mountain. I eventually made it up to high camp at the South Col at 26,000 feet. otherwise known as the death zone.
This is so cool.
You can hear it's pretty windy. You can hear my voice is basically gone. I've been climbing for almost 2 months at this point, and that's still what I have ahead of me. You're looking up at that like, is this a joke? Who signed me up for this? I'm just kidding. They call it the death zone for very good reason, because at 26,000 feet, human life cannot be sustained, and your body is slowly starting to die. It starts to pull all the blood out of your fingers and your toes and focuses on just keeping your core going, your heart, your lungs, your brain. Everything inside of you is just telling you to lay down and not move. At this elevation, you're starting to take 5 to 10 breaths for every single step. So it looks a lot like this. So if you're ever having a slow day at the office, just think of that. It's a pretty incredible place up there. So we went to sleep for what we thought would be our hopefully last night before we went to the summit. From there, we woke up. It was pretty dark. It was 10:30 in the night. I get out of my tent. I have my little headlamp on my head, and I'm thinking, okay. We're at 26,000 feet. We have to be at 29,032 feet to be at the summit. That's more than 3,000 feet of vertical gain. Again, that photo is what I was looking at. 3,000 feet that we need to do to cover. And I start doing the math, right? I'm like, okay, one step, 5 to 10 breaths times 3,000. I don't know. I'm bad at math in real life, so hypoxic brain up high. Couldn't figure it out. Just knew it was a lot. And I started to get completely freaked out and intimidating, thinking, there's just no way. There's literally no way. I am way too sick. That's way too far. So the only thing that I could do to begin to wrap my brain around what I needed to do was to break it into smaller parts. I had learned this in a different kind of dark. Chemo taught me, don't think about 18 weeks. Just make it to Tuesday. Just make it to this next treatment. Just make it one more day. So I took my headlamp and I shined it on a rock. And I said, okay, self, make it to that rock. That's all I need to do. I'm just gonna go to this rock. So step 5 to 10 breaths, step 5 to 10 breaths, walk, 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 walk. Before I knew it, I made it to that rock. So then I took my headlamp. I found something else, a piece of ice. There's not much up there, ice, rock. I said, that's a good piece of ice. I'm gonna go over there. Step 5 to 10 breaths, step 5 to 10 breaths, and next thing you know, I've made it to that next piece of ice. Not once did I believe I would make it to the summit of Everest that day. Every time I would think, I don't know. I really don't think I can do this. And then I would think, well, I didn't really think that I could make it to that last landmark, and I did. So maybe I can make it one more. And maybe I can make it one more after that. And I climbed through the entire night that way. And by 6:30 in the morning, I was at the place called the South Summit, which is just below the true summit of Everest. From the South Summit to the true summit, you have to do some of the most technical climbing of the day. This is a photo from the South Summit looking towards the true summit. So you're on this huge ridge. You have a 10,000 foot drop on your right side and an 8,000 foot drop on your left side straight into Camp 2. And for someone that's afraid of heights, this was a little bit tough. I just kept repeating to myself, no fall zone, Jess, do not fall, good footwork, hold on tight. And I'm happy to report on May 14th, 2023, 6 years after I was diagnosed with a life-threatening ovarian cancer, and just 2 years since I had been previously there with my mom, I did make it to the summit of Mount Everest. Thank you. It was a beautiful and clear day. I stood on top with my climbing partner on Mingma, or I sat. A rare moment where we were both standing higher in the world than anyone else. It was in honor of my cancer journey, in honor of the beauty and the grief of living, and in honor of all my dear friends that I had lost to this disease.
Look at this, on top of the world.
That's what it was like. There was a lot of snot. Thank you. There's a lot of heavy breathing. I'm standing essentially still in this photo, and you can see how hard I'm trying just to breathe. I felt overwhelmed with all it took to get there, but mostly all the love and support in my life. And I can honestly tell you that standing on the summit wasn't that big of a deal. It's just a mountain. It's a pile of rocks and ice. And you're only up there a few minutes. And all I could think about was getting down safely because I was quite sick and we had a lot of tough terrain to get through. But standing up there for a few minutes didn't change anything. I promise you plenty of stronger, better, more deserving climbers turned around that day for whatever reason. And the people that did stand on top are no better than the people that turned around. Because the summit isn't important. What is important are the lessons that you are learning along the way and how you're going to use those to be stronger on your next mountain. I was really proud of myself for powering through to the summit of Everest, but I was more proud of myself for being able to live fully and with hope even after a life-threatening cancer diagnosis. I was proud of the more than $500,000 our Any Mountain team was able to raise for research and awareness, and the impact we were able to have across the world advocating for more knowledge about this disease. But here's what I didn't expect. In the days after the summit, my phone started filling up with messages from women in chemo chairs, from patients waiting to see their doctors, having the worst day of their lives. They had heard our story and they'd written in to say, "You gave me hope to keep showing up today. You helped me believe that maybe I could endure this the way that you have. That maybe there might still be more good days ahead for me too." And that's when I understood what this really had been for. You are the people in the room when patients get the news that I got. You are the ones who look someone in their eyes after the hardest sentence they have ever heard, and you say, "Here's what we're gonna do." You're not just physicians or social workers, researchers, care teams, but you are hope givers. I know because I needed one. I know you are tired. I know this work takes everything that you have. The weeds are real, the losses are real, and the weight of what you carry is unfathomable to me. But every single day, you are giving someone a reason to keep going, and that is not small work. That is everything. In every appointment, every surgery, every treatment room, you are the one who leans in close and says, "I've got you." Don't ever underestimate what those words mean to someone who is terrified. I am living proof of what's possible on the other side of them. Thank you.